Hello and welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. My name is Nils Vinya, and today I'm going to be talking about how do you get promoted. Now, I've been fortunate that in my professional career, I've been promoted many times. Been promoted from an individual contributor to a manager to a director to VP, and over the last 10 plus years as a leadership coach, I've helped my clients go through countless promotions at all those different levels. So I'm going to share some behind the scenes tips, tricks, and strategies that can help you land your next promotion. The first thing we need to do is to define what a promotion is. And the clearest and simplest definition that I can provide to you is that a promotion is simply a recognition of value. Now, promotions don't happen because of luck, and they happen when you apply a strategy to your specific situation. Every promotion that I've ever earned has been the result of adding more value to my organization, and I got a quick story for you on how I got promoted by taking time off. Now, this might sound a little counterintuitive, but let me explain the situation. I was in a new role, and I had a great set of skills to apply to this role. So I felt like there was really good alignment. And once I mastered the technology that I was working with, a very complex analytics solution at the time, I knew that I was going to be exceptional in this role. It was one of those things where the alignment was perfect and just felt really good. I just had to get over the hurdle of learning the technology. And I also could see that if I got over this hurdle of learning technology in the first 3 or 4 months working for this company, that in this role, I was probably going to be kind of bored because I knew how to do it really, really well. And I knew that being bored was not a good thing for me. So I decided to figure out how to push myself from a growth and development perspective so that I would never be bored in this role that I was really well talented to do. And I did some research and I came up with the idea that I wanted to attend a leadership coach training program. And it was covering about 6 months of time. And the interesting thing is that I was required to go through this program. I was required to be on site at a physical location for 4 days out of every month. The group would meet on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, once a month for 6 months. Now, this is a big commitment, number one, because it's 4 days, and 2 are weekends, 2 are during the work week, and it was a little bit of a challenge. My wife and I had just had our 3rd child right before starting this program, and she has always supported me, always will. Appreciate her very much for that, and said, you know what, you just got to go do it. Just go for it. That was hurdle number 1. So we crossed that one. Hurdle number 2 was the fact that this was going to require me to be on site during 2 days a month, and I did not want to take PTO. I frankly didn't even have enough PTO. This was before the days when unlimited PTO was a thing. It's a little while ago. So I came up with a plan and I talked to my boss and I told my boss, I said, hey, I have an opportunity to attend a leadership coach training program that I really want to go through. And got him kind of excited in the idea and the fact that it would be a good thing to have somebody on the team and in the company who has leadership coaching skills from a accredited program. So got him excited. And then I dropped the bomb that I would need to be gone on a Thursday and Friday once a month for 6 months. And you can imagine his response was a little surprised. Like he wasn't quite sure what to expect. Like, he started hemming and hawing and I don't know if we can do that, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? Here's what I propose that I do in order to handle everything and make this seamless, no issues for my customers, my team, anybody. I said, here's what I'll do. I will go to this training on Thursday, Friday, and then of course Saturday, Sunday. But on Thursday and Friday, what I'll do is I'll turn on my out of office message on my email, and I will share the simple note that, hey, I'm traveling on business and I'm still checking email, but my response may be delayed. And that will provide me the air cover that I need to get from each of the sessions to each of the breaks, and on those breaks and during my lunches and in the evenings, I will pick up all of the work that I was doing with my clients and for the team, and I will make sure that nothing gets dropped. And he's like, that sounds like a pretty good plan. Okay. The next thing was, he's like, well, if the company's going to pay for this, we're going to need to include some kind of guarantee that you'll stick around for a certain period of time. I said, nope, no, thank you. I'm going to pay for this myself. I do not want the company to pay for anything. Now, this program was several $1,000s at the time. And as having a young family, 3 kids, living in the Bay Area at the time, there was no several $1,000s sitting around in an account ready to be spent on something like this. So I had to take a leap of faith, and my wife encouraged and supported me and said, you know what, just invest in yourself, do it. And I said, okay. So I committed the money up front. I paid that via credit card, where I didn't know where that money was going to get paid back from. I didn't have it, but I knew that I wanted to acquire this skill set because I knew it would lead to more opportunities and ultimately more income, whether that was directly from my employer, the company, or that was in the form of coaching clients. So I had this vision, but I didn't have the money right away. When I overcame these hurdles, then I was all set up to go. So I overcame the objections from my boss. I aligned with my wife. I secured the investment, just paying on a credit card and figuring it out later, because I knew that there was going to be something great. Now, after the first or second month of the coach training program, what was fascinating was that I was able to bring in all the strategies from every single weekend. I mean, remember, I'm being immersed for 4 days at a time in some incredible coaching tools and just a really powerful personal growth experience. And I was able to bring every single one of those tools back into my team and our organization on Monday morning. So now all of a sudden, I started showing up with different perspectives, different points of view, different ways to approach challenges, different ways to interact with people and other teams. And it started getting noticed. And everybody's like, what is going on with Nils? You just seem like you're showing up in a completely different way. And I was. That was the fun part. I was just so thrilled to have, filled my brain and my body with all these incredible experiences. And then I got a chance on Monday morning to share those experiences and dramatically increase the amount of value that I was delivering to my clients, to my team, to my peers, to my colleagues. Now, I was still an individual contributor at this time. So I went through a leadership coach training program before I was actually technically in a leadership position. But I knew that the skills that I would need to be a great leader would serve me well, both now at the current time when I was an IC, but also I needed to acquire those skills before I got into the role so that when I got into the role, I knew what to do. Now, the first month went by, was awesome. Had an incredible experience, brought those skills and tools and strategies into work on Monday morning and continuously used them. Month 2, same thing. About the month 3 mark, was where I actually received my official promotion from individual contributor to manager. And I took over a team of 3 who were my peers on Friday, and they were my direct reports on Monday. There's a lot more to how to navigate this promotion from peer to manager, but I don't have time to get into it in this episode. Maybe we'll do a follow-up one on that. But what was key was that my investment in myself was 100% recognized by my organization. And I became a no-brainer as to who was gonna fill the management role. Because I was pushing, I made it known, of course, to my boss that I wanted to be in a management position. And I was also willing to go and acquire the skill set that I needed to excel in that position. So that was a really powerful transformation for me, going from individual contributor to manager. Now, prior to this, and prior to investing in myself, I had spent many years, better part of a decade, never being promoted at all. And when I realized, back to the definition of what promotions are, which I shared earlier, that promotion is a recognition of value, I realized that in order to get promoted, all I had to do was add more value to my organization than I was before. And if I did add more value to the organization, then there was a great opportunity that would be presented to me because the organization wanted more and I was willing to give it. So the underlying kind of key points here to take away from this story are, thinking about how are you going to add additional value to your organization. And the key is how you are going to add that value is up to you, not your organization. In my example, in all the professional experiences that I've had, nobody has ever said you should go through a leadership coach training program to acquire the skills to become a leader. Like, never gonna happen. That was my choice. It was something I was deeply passionate about and something I was willing to do on my own before actually being in the role. And that proved incredibly valuable from demonstrating how much I was willing to commit to myself and then how much more value I was able to bring to the organization. So you will always need to give more value than what is expected. That is what promotions are based on. You need to continuously learn and improve. Because if you don't continuously learn and improve, you cannot give more value than what is expected or what you did yesterday. And this is clear in how we demonstrate leadership skills. Leadership is not about acquiring a skill and then doing that one skill over and over and over and over again. One of the funniest situations, if you've ever been interviewing leaders, and I've interviewed lots, from managers, directors, VPs, all across the board, dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And one thing I'm always looking out for is how much experience they really have. And experience is one of those general interview questions that I really like to dig in on. And people will say, oh, yeah, I have 5 years of management experience. In other words, on their resume, it said they've been a manager for 5 years. Well, when I dig in, what I oftentimes find is that they have 1 year of management experience, and they happen to repeat that 1 year 5 times. Now, that is a no-go for me. If you develop a set of skills in 1 year, and the next year, you're just doing the exact same thing that you learned the previous year, and same thing for the year after that, and year after that, and year after that, you aren't growing. You might conceptually think you have more experience, but the reality is that you don't. So always pay attention to how much value you are adding and how much additional value you are adding based on where you were last quarter, last year, 2 years ago, right? There should be a dramatic difference between where you were 6 and 12 months ago from a personal skill set perspective and where you are today. If there's not, then you're going to need to find a way to improve your skills, to grow, and not just repeat the exact same thing you did last year. When thinking about promotions, it's really important to understand where the relationship between employee and employer is today versus where it was in the past. Now, in the past, employers held all of the control. And oftentimes, people would sign up to hopefully work for a company for their entire career, or something close to it, or maybe only change a job once or twice throughout their entire professional working life. Now, this led to a great opportunity for companies to build long-term relationships with these employees, but the employees oftentimes gave up all of their ownership of their career development and gave it into the company. And they said, well, when there's an opportunity, hopefully I will be considered for it. So it's ultimately like a front seat, back seat kind of thing. The company was in the front seat, driving the car, saying, here's where we're going, this is it. The employees were in the back seat saying, hey, whatever you need, I'll go and do. And there was no guarantee of anything, but most times when employees were committed to the company over the long term, they were rewarded. Sometimes at the very end with something like the cliche gold watch or a pension or whatever it is. That was the previous generations, and that happened. It existed. But it has dramatically shifted and dramatically changed to where the control of an individual employee's career is now more in the hands of the employee than it ever has been before. And what this does is kind of completely shift the relationship between the employer and the employee. Before, when it was driven based off of control, everything was in the hands of the company, the decisions and ultimately the career growth. And sometimes only certain people could get access to training. So if you weren't on the fast track or you weren't in some special group, you were kind of left out. And that was just the way it was. And you were probably at certain points thankful to have a job. Now, in today's world, all those old norms are being broken down, and the shift is dramatically changing because the relationship between an employee and employer is now one based on value. It's not based on time. And that's the single most important shift that has happened in the last 20 plus years in the professional world, right? An employee and employer come together to form a relationship based on value. When one side is not providing enough value to the other side, then a change needs to be made. It's as simple as that, right? Or that question never would have come up in the past. It only would have been the employer saying, well, if you don't provide me enough value, you will be fired. The employee rarely ever said, well, employer, you're not providing me enough value to grow my career, so I'm going to leave. That was much less likely to occur, and it's much more likely to occur nowadays. So coming back to that point about, in the old way, only certain people could get access to training. And companies had high potential tracks and manager tracks and rotational programs for the select gifted few who are lucky enough to know somebody and show up and have a great opportunity and shake a hand and all things were good. Okay. Today, doesn't exist. Some companies might still employ that, but what has changed is that access to training, access to enablement, access to growth is universally applicable to and available to everybody, thanks to the internet and experts who have made their expertise available with the swipe of a credit card. Just like I shared before in my coach training program, right? That 20 years ago, that program never would have existed. Right? But it did. And I was the one who went out and said, I will swipe my credit card for something that I didn't know how I was going to pay in order to get this skill set that then would earn me recognition and then would put me in the position that I wanted to be in. That was my responsibility. So every single person, all of you listening to this, have access to world-class experts in whatever discipline or domain you happen to work in. It doesn't matter whether it's focused on sales or customer success or marketing or leadership or whatever it is, there is access to anybody in the world at the swipe of a credit card. And if you follow the people in your industry and in your space and the people who have already done the things you want to do, then you can get access to their expertise and take the shortcut. And this all comes under the umbrella really of taking control in a concept I like to call being the CEO of your career. Now, the CEO of your career, you are responsible for determining what's right for you. What's the right training to invest in? What's the right progression plan for you? What's the right company that's going to suit your long-term goals and short-term goals, right? It's no longer in the hands of the company. You're in control. And when you take control of your career, it's a completely different world. And I'm going to share an analogy with the CEO of a company. Now, the job of a CEO of a company is to increase the company's value for its shareholders. That's a very standard CEO job description. So your job as the CEO of your career is to increase the value of your company for your shareholders. And guess what? You are your company. You are your single most valuable asset. And your shareholders are your colleagues, your friends, your company, your family, your network. Those are all of your shareholders. And if you can add more value to those shareholders, then you will grow in your career, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're doing it, because you're in control. You are the CEO. You're also the only person who can make the call on what is right for you. So oftentimes in the old situation, people would place all their responsibility and all the decision-making capabilities of where to go in the career and what to do on somebody else and ask, what should I do? I did this for a long time myself in the beginning of my career. I would ask my bosses, you know my skills, you know where the company's headed, what should I do? And I never was willing at the time to answer that question for myself. But once I did start answering that question for myself, once I did become the CEO of my career, everything went up and to the right after that. So we're talking like 10 years as an individual contributor, and then going from an IC to a VP, vice president, in 2.5 years as a result of becoming the CEO of my career, investing in myself, and being in control. So I share all of this, to hopefully inspire some action and to recognize that the relationship that you are in with your employer today is one based on mutual value and respect. In the event that one of your sides, either you or your company, does not provide the appropriate amount of respect and or value, then a change needs to happen, and that's okay, right? There's no more real stigma that goes around when you change jobs. If I look at somebody's resume and I see 10 years in the same position at the same company, I'm likely going to question that and ask and really dig into, did you have really 10 years of experience, like I said before, or did you have 1 year of experience and you just got lazy and repeated it 10 times, right? Whereas 20, 30 years ago, that would have been the stamp of approval. Well, I can count on this person to stick around for a long time. It's not that way anymore. It's just fundamentally changed how we engage with our companies. And that has to be at the forefront of your mind, because if you're not thinking about that already, I guarantee somebody else is. And there's a certain amount of promotions that are going to be out there. And it's those people who are becoming the CEO of their career, who are investing in themselves, no matter the cost, no matter what their company is willing to do, they're the ones who are going to get the opportunities, just like I did. There were many other people on my team at that time who had the possibility of becoming promoted into the manager position. I earned that promotion because of the actions that I took. I did not wait for them to say, oh, here you're getting promoted. Oh, and by the way, we're going to send you to a training. No, because they weren't. They never would. They never did. And that was okay, because I knew that if I wanted this, I was going to be the one in the role. I needed the skills. It was my responsibility. I was the CEO of my career. I was going to deliver on that. As you can tell, there's a lot of psychology when it comes to promotions. We've been talking about being the CEO of your career, taking responsibility, getting and acquiring skills before you're actually in the role, and believing that there will be a great outcome if you put in the work and if you invest in yourself. So the first half of this episode was really all about the psychology piece. And the second half is really about the tactics and everything that I teach from a leadership perspective. There is always psychology and always tactics, because one without the other, you're not going to make as much progress as you are when they are together. So we've covered the psychology pieces. Now let's get into the tactics, which I call your promotion plan blueprint. And this is a series of exercises to go through. So if you're listening to this in a car, you can mentally follow along, but you're going to want to rewind and get back to it once you get to a destination or you think about it. If you're really thinking about, how do I get to that next level? What's the most appropriate way for me to do that? I'm going to take you through it step by step. And in the show notes and on my website, we'll have an opportunity to download the promotion plan blueprint guide, where you can go through a set of these exercises and write them out for yourself to get the exact same results. So here goes. Let's take a current situation, and I'm making all of this up. This is purely hypothetical, based off course on real life experience, but it's hypothetical. This is not about me. This is not about one of my clients. This is just general assumptions. Okay, we have a manager. Let's say that you are a manager today. You're responsible for a team of 5 people. And let's say you've got to look at your current situation from the compensation perspective first. So from a base salary perspective, let's say your base salary is $125,000 a year, and your variable compensation is $20,000 a year. So your total current compensation is a package of $145,000 a year. I'm not including anything on equity or insurance or 401k or any of that. I just want to talk about base and variable comp, which those two added together yields total comp. So we got 125 base, 20k variable, gives us a total compensation package of $145,000 a year. Now, let's look at the next promotion. So if you were this manager, you might be thinking, well, the next promotion that I would like to achieve is to get to the director level. And at the director level, instead of managing a team of 5, I would manage a team or 2 teams or 3 teams of 5 or 6 people each. So my responsibilities are going to increase, and therefore I'm going to add more value to the organization. So therefore the compensation is going to be bigger. Now, at the director level, let's say the base is now $150,000 a year. The variable increases to $35,000 a year, and that leaves us with a total compensation for the director level position of $185,000. Now, you can validate any and all salary data that you want with your own anecdotal evidence, your network's information, industry reports and guides. Salary.com is also a great site, freely available. You can look up any job title, either across the US or across the world or in a specific geographic region, and get specific information about where the median is and what the high end and low end of the range is. So that's, 100% up to you to plug in these numbers. And when you get the promotion plan blueprint doc and you download it, you can plug in whatever you want. So our total compensation for our current state at manager level, $145,000 a year. Our total compensation for director level, $185,000 a year. Okay, so if we look at just those two levels, the next thing we're going to calculate is what's called the total net compensation increase. And this essentially is the difference between your total current compensation as a manager and the future total compensation as a director. Now that difference is between $185K and $145K, or total net compensation increase of $40K. So now that we know that if you were to be promoted to director, there would be a total annual net compensation increase of $40,000. So now the question becomes, what are you willing to spend today to get that $40,000? And this is the tricky part. Sometimes people think that, well, when I get promoted, then I'll have money in the account because I'll be making more and then I could pay for something. But that's actually not the right time to do it. The right time to invest in yourself is now, so that you get the skills and demonstrate that you're adding more value before you're even in that position. So there's a whole lot of things that we'll talk about in a follow-up episode about what it really takes from a skills perspective to go from a manager to a director. But for right now, let's just focus on the compensation piece. So to get $40,000 in the future, think about this to yourself. How much would you be willing to invest in yourself to get $40,000 in the future? So in other words, you have to spend some amount of money now to get $40,000 a year in the future, more than you're getting right now. So let's say, for example, you were willing to spend $5,000. So you're willing to spend $5,000 now to get $40,000 in the future. So now what we want to look at is something called the ROL. And this stands for Return on Leadership Skills. Remember, leadership skills are going to be the single greatest additive piece to your toolbox to be able to increase your value for your organization, especially if you're going from manager to director, going director to VP, VP to C-level. Leadership skills is where it's at. So now that you've identified how much you're willing to invest, the $5,000, to get the net compensation increase of $40,000, we're going to calculate the return on leadership skills, which essentially is our total net compensation increase divided by the dollars that you're willing to invest now times 100 to make it a percent. And if you are willing to invest $5,000 now to get $40,000 in the future, well, that's a return on leadership skills of 800%. And remember that one-time investment of $5,000 yields a $40,000 per year. So it's an annual recurring thing because you were on a salary, and a salary increase and gets paid every year. 800% return on leadership. So whenever you think about investing in yourself, whenever you think about the cost of a program to go into it, you can't just look at the dollars that it's going to cost today. What you have to look at is what's the return on those dollars that you're going to get in the future. In this simple example, if you spend $5,000 today and you get $40,000 more in the future, you got an 800% return. Now, I don't need to tell you that this is unheard of in the world of investment, right? Stocks, bonds, portfolios, housing, whatever you invest in, crypto even, whatever you like, right? You will never find an 800% return, especially not in something nearly as vast as what is possible here. When I went through my experience going from individual contributor to manager, remember I spent several $1,000s, it was close to the $5,000 range, and my return, my net compensation increase was probably in the $25,000 range. So I was making an incredible return, and I was ecstatic about that because I didn't even know it at the time, but it happened. And that's why I've gotten so much more consistent after getting that first promotion to the next one, because then I knew how to plan it and I knew how to calculate this return on leadership skills. So once you know that you want this total net compensation increase, 40K, you're willing to invest in yourself, 5K, that will return 800%. Well, what else is there to do but figure out the best possible way to spend 5K? And that will give you the greatest skills and put you in the best possible position to get that net compensation increase. Right? And there's a number of different ways that you can spend that money. My personal preference, so I created the B2B Leaders Academy. It didn't exist in a way where there was a place where any leader could go and acquire leadership skills through content, community, and coaching, and have everything they needed to earn their next promotion and confidently handle any leadership situation that comes up, whether it's an issue with your team, whether it's a strategic project, whether it's a company-wide initiative you need to run that you've never done before, whether it's giving a presentation to your board, right? All of those skills wrap up under the leadership skills perspective, and that's why the B2B Leaders Academy exists. Now, once you identify what your big picture plan is, here's what you have to do from a communication perspective. So you've done all the planning, and you're going to sit down with your direct manager, whatever level they're at. And this is in a one-on-one setting or a separate one-off meeting. And there's two things that you need to discuss with them. And you need to be very, very upfront, and you need to be very crisp and very clear in your communication. And the first thing is the next role that you want. So in this example here, say, well, I'm currently in a manager role. My desire is to be in the director position. You're not going to assign a time to this by X date, whatnot. No, that is not the point. The goal is you're going to state very clearly the next role that you want. The second thing is your plan for how you're going to focus on the leadership skills to deliver and add more value to your organization. So let's say, for example, you were going to enroll in the B2B Leaders Academy. Here's what that would look like. I'm currently a manager. My plan, and I want, is to get promoted to director. In order to support the growth and development of my leadership skills, I've decided to enroll in the B2B Leaders Academy, which will provide me with content, community, and coaching, and give me all the tools that I need to successfully navigate the position that I'm in now, and also set me up for success in the director role. That's it. That's the plan. You see, when you come to the table with a plan for how you're going to add more value to the organization through the building all your skills, you're going to stand out and be positioning yourself as the best person for the next promotion. And this is the entire strategy behind how to get promoted, right? Your boss will be impressed by the fact that you took the initiative to, one, be very clear about what it is that you want, and number two, you actually came to the table with a plan. I've managed hundreds of people in my career, and the number of times that people came to me with a plan for what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it, and then asked for my guidance to help support them as they progressed along their journey, was very few, if any. I mean, it was really hard to even remember any of those situations, but it was always there, right? I came to with a plan to my boss every single quarter, probably, maybe even every 6 months, to make sure that I was continuously pushing and I was going to be the one in the driver's seat. Now, what I did get a lot of times in that leadership position, all my leadership positions really, was people coming to me saying, when can I get promoted? And the answer was, what do you mean? I would always ask more questions because that is a question that can't be answered. Or one of my favorites, what do I need to do to get promoted? Well, then you're putting all the burden on your leader to say, well, now I have to come up with this perfect stair-step ladder. And the one time you accomplish all these things, you're going to come back and say, well, I did all the things you said I'm going to do. Why aren't I promoted? It's not how this works. That's putting all the control in the hands of the company, like we talked about before. This is about putting the control in your hands. And whether the company you're working for today recognizes your potential and your drive, or another company recognizes it, it's up to you, right? You are the single source for where you are going to go in your career, and you have to have the plan. You have to build the plan. I do not care if you're at an IC, manager, director, or VP level. You build the plan. Your company does not build the plan. So that's a little walkthrough of the promotion plan blueprint. And I've taken hundreds of leaders by this point through this process. And there's always kind of an eye-opening, wow, I didn't really look at the investment in myself from a return on leadership perspective. That's really interesting, because spending $5,000 out of context just sounds like a lot of money. I don't have $5,000. But when I say, well, would you like to spend $5,000 to get $40,000 in the next perhaps 12 months? Then it's like, oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. I would spend $5,000 today, get $40,000 more in the future. So that's the mindset, again, back to the psychology pieces, that you need to wrap your head around, that an investment of yourself is your responsibility. Becoming a great leader is your responsibility. It is not the responsibility of your company. Your company is there to support you 100%. They're not going to just sit on the sidelines, but you need to come up with a plan. You need to come up with what you want to do, and you need to be the driver. And then you engage your boss, you engage your company to help them fulfill your vision, but it's your vision. That's the key. That's the big piece. That's how you become the CEO of your career. And this is just so incredibly important from a leadership perspective, that if you believe these things that I've been talking about today on both the psychology and the tactics side, your career will take off, it will go far. You go as far as you want, at whatever level is appropriate, because you know that there's always a coach or somebody out there or a program who has done what you want to do, and you can always pay them and take the fast track. So I hope you enjoyed this episode walking through how do you get promoted. There's a lot to this. I'm going to do some follow-on episodes looking specifically at individual levels, like what does it take to get promoted to a manager, from manager to a director, director to VP. I've been through this myself, and my clients have been through this many, many, many times. So I've seen the levers, I've seen the things, I know what the steps to take are. And that's one of the values of working with someone like myself in the B2B Leaders Academy, is I've done all this stuff. So if you're at any of those levels and you're looking to get promoted and you're not 100% in control, or you're not 100% sure how to go about it next, send me an email, nils, N-I-L-S, at B2B, the letter B, the number 2, the letter B, leadersacademy.com. Let's have a conversation about whether or not I can help you and you're a good fit for the B2B Leaders Academy, and if the B2B Leaders Academy is a good fit for you. That's it. Let's just have a simple conversation. So until next time, take care, have a wonderful rest of the day, keep on being the CEO of your career.